Well, it's now Saturday and I'm going to attempt the brake service on the driver's side, the front right hand side caliper. Hopefully this one isn't as bad, because I did actually change the caliper about a year ago or sometime last year, I think. There is a bit of a lip at the back of that disc as well, so you never know, it might be the same scenario. But anyway, I shall attempt to loosen the lug nuts with the wheel brace first, rather than trying to rattle away with the torque gun. But yeah, they were on a bit tight, I would say. But anyway, no problem. Nice sunny day today. Only -1 degrees centigrade last night. Well, that's everything jacked up. I'm hoping these wheel nuts are not as tight as the last time. That was okay. That was okay. That was fine. And that was fine. So obviously I've taken this wheel off since I had the tyres fitted, I guess. So I need to get the locking wheel nut. So I'll do that with two hands to make sure I've got sufficient pressure on the torque gun to take that off, but I don't tend to tighten it up as tight. So, not as bad as yesterday, for sure. Well, same old story, safety first. Wheel there. And I've got the axle stand under the control arm, and that's what I use there as the point for the trolley jack, as opposed to the official one here. Seems to work fine for me. So we'll have a look at the effects of a Scottish winter. So nice corroded looking 17mm bolts there. Nice corroded looking 14mm bolts there. Bit of bloom on the aluminium. So the first step is to undo these two 14mm nuts to take the caliper out of the way. And as I say, I can definitely feel, you can probably see it, there is a bit of a ridge there. So it could be that the slide pins are not quite working how they should, but we'll soon find out. So when I fitted this new caliper, I did actually put new slide pins in, and the standard bolts that came with the slide pin kit, which was a Start brand that I got from Auto something, I can't remember the name, I'll find out. But so that's starting to turn, so I'm having to put the spanner on to lock the movement. But yeah, and somehow my spanner has decided not to ratchet in the direction I want it to. So there's a good outtake. Well, there's the first one. See, this is a 12mm bolt, and there's copper grease on there, so it did come out okay. But this seemed to have a tendency to spin, so I'm guessing that because that's spinning there, this should be moving freely in here, hopefully. So anyway, I'll get the bottom bolt out, put that in the socket set. So anyway, next one. So I didn't need to use the spanner on the lower one. This one is quite nicely corroded there, so hopefully there's not been water ingress seizing it into the lower one. But the lower one was the problem on the other side as well. So that's the copper slip, sorry, on the bolt, allowing that to come out freely. Those bolts are not old. I mean, I only changed the caliper at some point last year, so as you can see, corrosion isn't wonderful up here in Scotland. But I did one thing. There was a guy on Facebook was asking about if there's any play on the drive shaft. There is a slight bit of play on the drive shaft, but nothing too drastic on this side. So this is definitely much better than the other side. That's moving in and out quite nice and freely, turning fine. The bottom one, I think it might not be quite as smooth as the top, but yeah, it's moving in and out okay. They could do with some lubrication at the point where the caliper pushes against the pads here, and looks like we could probably do with some there as well. So next thing is to remove this pad carrier or caliper mounting bracket. I sort of go between the two terms. So I'm going to unbolt that. So that's the two 17mm bolts. There's one there and there's one here. Well, the bolts that were holding this on, they were much harder to get out than on the other side, but it wasn't bad. But that's even with a bit of copper grease, so I think I'll probably put a bit more grease onto the bolts before I put them back on. So are the pads moving? So that's moving there, that's moving there, that's moving, that's moving. Slide pins, that feels fine, that feels fine. Yeah, I'll take them out just to see what kind of condition they're in, but this side's definitely much better. But I will give it a good clean up. There's no point in taking it all off and not giving it a go, especially with the effort of jacking the car up, taking the wheel off and all the rest of it. So I've got the Ceratec for the brake pads. I'm going to use the lithium based grease. I've still to try the silicon based grease, but I think that'll probably have to wait until autumn. I'll give the brakes a go over before winter. So the pads, you can see it's kind of dug in there a little bit. There's a slight little lip from the edge of the disc. I'll have a look at the disc as well to compare it. So there's that shim. There's quite a lot of dirt actually in there rather than corrosion on this side, I would say. That pad looks, could be slightly worn at that side compared to this. Again, there's that sort of lip on the edge there, on the inner edge I should say. There's obviously not too much corrosion because these shims are coming off quite easily. Obviously I'm making it look more difficult because I'm only using one hand. So yeah, they're not too bad, but they'll definitely do with a quick buzz up and a quick clean down. So I've got some brake cleaner there. Give that a squirt with that, and I've got my drill here, so that shouldn't be a big deal. And I'll remove these slide pins just to check them, but I'll get the disc first. Let's have a look at the disc. So this is the Mintex disc. Sorry, there was wind blowing the towels there. So there's a definite lip there. You might see it better on the edge. But yeah, that's definitely. And then there's a lip there, so the pads are not quite as centralized perhaps as they should be. So that's definitely like a Skeletrix track or something. It's going in a groove. But at this point I'm not worried about that. I'll just have to have a spare set of discs to replace it with. The other side, it's not bad. There's a very slight amount of wear. So that was the inner pad. This is the outer pad. It's the same thing. It's kind of caught. See that lip? The pads have gone over the edge and caught. And it's a definite Skeletrix track, but not as bad on the outer edge as they are on the inner edge for wear. So I don't know if that's a peculiarity of Mintex discs or these pads, whatever brand they were, but I can't see that getting any better. But as long as they work, that's all that concerns me for the time being. Right, so I've scrubbed that down. I've scrubbed this end down. I've cleaned out the bores. the slide pins were actually okay. They were moving freely, but I'm just going to put fresh grease in them. I've given these a bit of a clean up as well. So I'm going to put some copper grease behind here. I'll put the slide pins in first. I'll be using, as I say, the lithium based grease, but in the autumn, maybe about October-ish, I'll maybe take these out and try it with silicon based grease. Supposedly that's the best thing to do, but so far these were fine. I think I used that the last time, I can't remember, maybe it was just regular grease, I'm not entirely sure. So the bellows or the grommets look fine, look in decent condition, they're seated well. There's no problems with any corrosion coming onto the slide pins as far as I can tell. It's all limited to the top. So grease up, slip them in with the lithium grease, copper grease behind the shims, and then once I've got that done, I'll use this brake grease for the pads to go in the slides. So that's the first one in. It's nicely sealed up against the edge. One of the things I've picked up on in recent times is don't put grease on the end, because if you get a blob, it stops it going in and out. It kind of locks itself in like an airlock. So just put the grease on this part of the shaft. Don't bother putting it all the way to the end. I mean, you can probably put it on the rubber bit to some extent, but this one as well goes on the leading edge, supposedly, the one with the rubber. That's the direction of travel of the wheel. It's the first one it comes to. I have absolutely no idea what that does. Somebody can perhaps explain to me that's more technically minded about slide pins, but you should have that on the point at which the wheel comes to first. But wheel being a circle, I'm pretty sure it's pretty much the first point anywhere on the wheel, but well, that's supposedly part of the design. So get that lubed up here, make sure you put plenty over the collar so that when the rubber goes against it, it gets a nice dust and waterproof seal, which seems to have been the case so far, and I want to continue doing that. Well, the sun's disappeared behind a cloud, so that's this one done. So make sure your bellow or grommet is right up over the collar of that bolt. Make sure it's a good connection and seal on the caliper bracket. So that's that and that. It's turning nicely, moving in and out nice and smoothly. So Next thing is to do the copper anti-seize stuff. Well, that's the caliper hanger or brake pad carrier all fully reassembled. So slide pins have been greased, reinserted. The behind the shims has been sanded down, rust corrosion cleared out as much as possible, bit of copper grease behind there. The shims have been re-added, and then I've put this Ceratec brake grease between the pad and the shims, and then I've put a little bit of copper grease, maybe not a little bit, but I've put some copper grease on the back of the pad that goes against the caliper. And then on this side, I could probably just put some grease on there, but I'll just put it on the back of the caliper so that there's some lubrication for that. So that's ready for bolting back onto the knuckle, or the hub, whatever you want to call it. Fingers are covered in grease here. Well, that's it all reassembled. So I'll put some copper slip, on the back end of these tongues or teeth or whatever you want to call them, so that it rubs against the back of the pad. I put a little smear of copper slip on the disc hub, and then it's a case of putting the wheel back on, and then getting a cup of tea and a bite to eat for lunch. What's that now? It's 2:30. So if you weren't stopping to take a video, you should be able to do this easily in half an hour, maybe 50 minutes if everything goes to plan. But I've probably been out here for well over an hour now, if not an hour and a half. So if you have any questions, just ask. Feel free to like and subscribe. So this time next year I'll be a millionaire making shitty YouTube videos. Anyway, hope you're all well and have a good weekend. Time for a cup of tea. Well, some of you might be wondering why I'm only doing the front end, but that's because I did the back end in January. But that's all done. I think I'm going to have a quick check of all my fluids like oil, water, washer fluid. These are the back ones, so I did replace the discs here in January. They're looking okay. No sign of any lip on the disc. Then again, they've only been on 3 months, so. But yeah, there we go. Nothing else to say except hopefully the sun continues. I don't know what temperature it is, but it's bloody warm in these black overalls, soaking up all the sun. So anyway, have a good day.